President Obama facing all kinds of problems as leader of the free world. So you'd think that he just might want to reach out and touch someone, right? Maybe like a former president. Pick up the phone and call him. After all, it's a really small club. Recently, former President Clinton opened up about the phone calls he got from President George W. Bush.
We talked about everything in the right world. He asked my opinion. Half the time he disagreed with it. But I felt good about that. I thought that was a really healthy thing.
Wow. Chris Plante, syndicated radio talk show host. Leslie Marshall, Fox News contributor and also syndicated radio talk show host. Leslie, what are the chances that President Obama is going to pick up the phone and call George W. Bush? I mean, they have a lot in common right now. There's that thing called war in Iraq and Syria.
I think it's a very slim to none chance, to be honest, although I think it would be a good idea if he did. We know that former President Clinton reached out to Nixon with regard to Russia. We know, as President Clinton, we just saw in that soundbite, had George W. Bush reach out to him. I think knowledge is power. It's important to talk to the person who had the job before and has information and experience. But if it's done, it would have to be done very, very quietly. But I don't think President Obama will pick up the phone because he definitely has been very vocal about his disagreements with how former President George W. Bush handled Iraq and with the perception of how things were handled in that administration versus now.
Or maybe he wouldn't want to call him, Chris, because he wouldn't have to say, wow, maybe you did a couple things right and look at the mess I find myself in now.
Well, the way things are going, it looks like President Obama's been calling Jimmy Carter for advice. Maybe that's why all of this is happening. But I don't expect he's going to call President Bush anytime soon because President Obama drips with disdain for President Bush. President Obama drips with disdain for President Clinton. President Obama drips with disdain for the people on Capitol Hill. He doesn't really speak to anybody. He's one of the most insulated presidents I think we've ever seen. He has no respect for his predecessors or it seems for anyone that he might take advice from in Washington, D.C. And remember, Neera Tanden, President Obama's staffer that left the White House a couple of years ago, and declared in an interview that, Bill Clinton shouldn't feel bad for the fact that President Obama doesn't call. He doesn't talk to anybody because he doesn't like people. And she said it's like Bill Gates becoming Bill Gates without liking computers.
It is such a small club. I mean, I think when people saw what President Clinton just said with George W. Bush sitting next to him, they felt bipartisanship. Wow, what a concept. And President Clinton has also said this. After Nixon died, Leslie, he found himself wishing he could pick up the phone and ask President Nixon what he thought about this issue or that problem, especially about Russia. Now, why wouldn't President Obama get past whatever troubles he's had with President Bush in his mind and just do it for the betterment of the country?
Well, a couple of things here. First of all, we have not heard about President Clinton talking to former President Bush or Nixon until after the fact. And I think if it were to happen for President Obama, it would have to be that way, even though they're coming up slightly, the approval ratings. With the midterm election around the corner, I think those that don't like the president, I think especially some on the extreme right, are going to perceive this as, hey, Obama doesn't know how to do the job of president. He's got to call the guy who had the job before him. But with regard to not just humility, but with regard to justice, I've talked to a number of people who do what I do or have done what I've done simply because we can always do it better. And I think that goes for presidents. And Grencha, you make a great point. It's a small club. Pick up the phone.
It goes for any profession, right? Chris and Leslie got to wrap it there.